You are listening to Radiant Creators, a collaborative project composed of people whose passion, purpose, and dedication requires forging their own unique path of empowerment and livelihood. A radiant creator isn't making a living, they are living.
You are Melinda Norman from Marigold
Hi.
Healing.
I am.
Yeah, and it's great to have you on. And Daniel Lewis Crumpton, he contacted me and said there's somebody you really should talk to because she's got the radiant creator vibe. And oh yeah, he did. He said that. And
Yeah, I'll have to look him up. I have no idea who he is.
oh really?
Of course I do.
Yeah, he's a hard guy to forget. I
Yeah,
mean,
he is.
yeah.
He is.
If you've ever met him, you're not going to forget him that easily. And I think he actually said that she's a licensed therapist out of Oregon that also does metaphysical work like past life regression and the like. Her name is Melinda Norman. She's from Marigold Healing. And he said, I've never met a therapist that's able to do the things she can do for sure. She'd be a great guest. Now, I know that Daniel's a basket case, so that's like, you know...
Not anymore.
I'm glad you helped him out.
You're welcome, universe.
Yeah. So I guess let's start. I mean, that's how we got in contact, and you were nice enough to talk to us. And so let's tell us a little about yourself and what you do.
Oh, well, man, where to even begin? A little about me, specifically in terms of what I can provide for the show is, like you said, I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Oregon, and I kind of like to consider myself as walking that line between the worlds of, the science world and the metaphysical world, because I do have a science background. And when I had my spiritual awakening, it took quite a while for me to kind of like not that I've come out of the science community, but be able to see both sides and how they're both basically doing the same thing, just kind of in a different format. And so I work with anybody who comes to me, really. I don't really have a specific type of person. I work with 3-year-olds. I work with 80-year-olds. I work with people who are completely anti-religion, anti-spiritual, anti-everything, blow up all the churches, kind of people. Not really, but like that type of person who just wants to live a better life. And I work with people who are extremely awake to the point where they're getting constant downloads, and we have to talk about, spirits visiting them in the middle of the night and their concerns regarding I don't know, like spirits in their room, and just like, how am I supposed to live my life when I'm getting these messages, and how do I integrate myself into a normal reality when I'm experiencing things at this level. And so I work with everybody in between. And that's because I have this unique background of doing both. Ooh.
There we go.
Hello.
You got to push the button. Yeah.
Did that answer the question?
It does. Well, it begins. So one thing I realized right away is that I have to work on my background, because your background, for those watching, is really good. I like that. It works really well. Yeah, I just have a wall right now. I'm going to move studios, and, so now I'm feeling a little bit, depressed. Just kidding.
Oh.
No, just kidding.
Okay.
I'm background jealous.
Okay. Well, that's a very, very interesting feeling to have, because jealousy, there's nothing actually wrong with it. And this is something I try to teach people, or to try to communicate to them, is that no emotions, no experiences are wrong. What are you doing with the information? If you turn and face it and say, I'm having background envy, you can choose to focus your attention on how nice my background is and how much better it is than yours, and yours is boring and bland and nobody likes you and you should just jump off a cliff. Or you could say, wow, no, come back. Or you can take the perspective of, wow, that's a really interesting background that she has. What can I do to be inspired by that, so that I can then bring things in that reflect me as an individual? So 2 very, very different perspectives. And that's how you can take something as ugly as jealousy can become and turn it into something beautiful. Because emotions are really neutral. Everything is neutral until we assign that value to it. So my point is, I'm very interested to see what you're going to come up with.
Oh yeah. Well, you'll see in the next show. It'll be pretty wild back there. I have some amazing
Wonderful.
artwork that's usually behind me and such, but I've been a little lazy. So my background envy is helping me just get more motivated to move stuff over here to the new office. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, you mentioned an awakening. And so
Hmm.
you mentioned you had an awakening, and it seems like
Hmm.
everybody along the way eventually has some kind of an awakening, and some people are just born that way. Just life's
Hmm.
always been a bit unique, and I think they maybe have the easiest time of it, depending on what their childhood is like. Then there's people having an awakening of sorts later. So,
Hmm.
can you tell us about your awakening? Who was this person, and now who is it after that awakening?
Oh, wow. You wouldn't recognize me. You really wouldn't. I was awake as a child. I was very, very awake. Everything was alive to me. Trees talked to me, the whole thing. But I grew up in a very abusive home and, kind of suffered any kind of abuse you can imagine. And I've worked through that. And I don't want to spend a ton of time on that because I don't really feel like that's necessary because I've transcended past that. And I've gotten to the point where I realize why that happened, why I contracted for it so I can be a therapist and help people. So I grew up in this environment that crushed the magic out of me through years and years of traumatic experiences. And then I ended up going through a period where I just kind of, some people talk about shutting it off. I didn't really consciously shut it off. It was more of just like, it and while I went and I tried to kind of fit in and like have friends and like do the thing that you're supposed to do in college that you're like told you're supposed to do. And I started kind of like checking things off of my list, that list of things that you were indoctrinated with, that you believe that if you do all these things, you check the boxes, you'll be happy. And I wasn't consciously aware that's what I was doing, but I was just following protocol. And so I ended up getting married. I was in a marriage for 10 years that was, good man, not a great man, but good man, bad fit. And again, sustained a lot of trauma in that relationship, in that marriage. And the night before my 33rd birthday, I fell down the stairs and broke my foot. 33. Yes. And I spent my 33rd birthday at the doctor and vomiting because it was so painful, just all this stuff. So that's within 2 weeks, my life changed. I left my husband. I had stayed at home to be a stay-at-home parent, and some people would say that that's kind of the moment you die. And then I had these miniature resurrections throughout from that point in time until now. And so that was kind of like the death of my old life, where I couldn't go back. And there's like of course a whole story behind that would take a really long time. But so that was the part that changed for me. Left my husband, started my career, and then it was about 2.5, almost 3 years later, I had what some people would call the actual awakening. So imagine it as you've died, and now you're coming back to life, and they're putting like the jolt on you, those like like in the emergency room when you flatline. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. So I had that experience where I was shocked awake. And the short version of that story is that I had on a Friday night randomly thought it would be funny to go to a roadside psychic, and she played a singing bowl that shot a string. It was very very thin, like a thread of. It was like a lightning bolt through my head and out the other side of my body. And I am very, very good at finding explanations for things. And for this, I couldn't explain it away. And I ended up going home. And regardless of the fact that I've always been interested in magic and the metaphysical, I had never really found the thing. I had studied religions, I had gone to many different types of churches, but none of it felt true. None of it felt real. It felt like confining and limiting. And it just didn't feel right because it didn't really feel like love. It felt like control. And so I now have this experience that I cannot explain away. I go home. I have nobody in my life that is spiritually awake at this point. I am alone. And I ended up journaling and writing on my whiteboard about just like, this is crazy, like what I'm experiencing. And I don't like, but the people are going to think I'm crazy. I'm a therapist. I'm supposed to be rational. How am I? And then I just had this moment where I'm like, this is crazy, but the world is crazy. Do I really believe what everybody else believes? Not really. Most people aren't happy. I had already done everything on the checklist and that didn't make me happy. So what was the next step? Was to start to listen to myself, start to like take those big risks, start to jump off of cliffs without a parachute on. And that's just been my style. It's just always like, I don't understand this. I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to jump off this cliff. And over the course of the next several months, I ended up attracting more people into my life that could help kind of guide me a bit. Not that great, but just, they were all kind of almost like a Canterbury Tales kind of situation where you're like doing this pilgrimage and you kind of walk with some people for a while and they tell you their story and then you kind of branch off and everything. But in the last year was one of the worst years of my life because I went through a massive amount of transformation but that was like the end of it. That was like I died, I was shocked back into life. And then last year was like the final stages of my resurrection, if you will. And now I'm at a place where if I look at who I was 5 years ago, I don't even recognize her. Like that is so not me. I don't think any of those things anymore. It's like this polar opposite. And yet I have her memories. I have her skills. I have her education. I have her letters after my name, you know? And so I look back on that with like, wow, that was a heavily abused, traumatized woman. And it's like I'm a completely different person now. I'm like a walk-in now, as some people would say. I don't think that that's true, but I'm just completely transformed, which is ironic because I have a phoenix tattoo, which I did not consciously consider when I started it, but that's what ended up happening. And I've recently completed it, so cycle is complete.
Oh, I like it. Reborn from the ashes. Well, it seems like so many people who have that awakening, who have that spiritual life, the fringe dwellers, as Stuart Wilde called them, fringe dwellers,
Love it.
Yeah, they're just in society enough, but they're also mostly out of it. It's this balancing act. So they're on the fringe, the fringe dwellers. It seems like many have very common characteristics. Like they're different when they were kids, but then also the abusive family, check, got it, it's a requirement. And then abusive on some level at least, and it can vary. But then you have the long and crappy marriage, check, that's essential, and that's and I see that a lot these days. In the situation I find so many people in is I wish I could tell them, I could say, look, neither one of you is really bad. You're just becoming people you don't like because you're where you shouldn't be. If you could just don't make each other wrong, just stop doing this. And because you're really good people and you're blaming each other and you're becoming this darkness that you don't like and you start to not recognize who you are. It's terrible. So you finally escape that. And then it gets groovy. But then you're on that kind of dark path that like the fool in the tarot. You're taking that step off the cliff. You're trusting. And that's when the fellowship comes along. That's when you start to find these magical people after you've just said, I'm just going. Yeah. And you embrace that craziness. You don't fail. And then you get a phoenix tattoo. And
yeah, you do.
Boom.
It's a pretty standard, it's on the checklist of things to get a phoenix tattoo.
It definitely is. Well, you also mentioned downloads. And so how would you define that? Because awakening people, I'm going to call them that. I wish I had a good word for it, but I was calling them awakening people, awake people. They tend to have downloads. And I think in maybe our circles, that's really, a download? Well, tell me about it. We tend to have a confidence and a trust in them, and we listen to others that have had them because the ego stepped out of the way and something came through. And so how would you define a download? Tell us about downloads, because you're helping people who are having them, and I imagine you're having them. It must be, that sounds fun to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously I can only tell you how I experience them, but everybody experiences them their own way. So for me, a download for me is when I'm being energetically aligned with something else, with something higher up. So when I say something higher up, imagine the earth is domed. Okay. And inside of that dome is the human experience, And so the way that I see it, it's kind of, there's a really, really famous painting of there's the dome. It's a hermetic It's anyway, and it's like a man peeking outside of the dome. You know what I'm talking about? I don't remember the name of that artwork, but I actually, the night that I woke up, I'd never seen that artwork before, but that's how I was visualizing it. It's like, I want to see outside of the dome because this isn't real. So a download for me is when I'm getting, it's like there's a hole in the dome and something's coming into me. And it depends on, I receive it in different ways. It could be, so I'm very claircognizant, which means clear knowing, where I just know things. I just know. And so those to me are downloads. You know, anytime I'm getting any type of information, I'm clairsentient, like very clairsentient. And so that to me it's an energy exchange. Sometimes it's from above, sometimes it's the person in front of me, sometimes it's the person all the way over there. So some of the other types in it's meant to be information that I use in order to engage in something. Okay. So some downloads are meant to like kind of reprogram my technology, if you will, my brain, my heart, my gut, my body. And it'll do things like maybe I have an addiction to soda. I don't, but let's say someone does. It can, oh, do you? I saw a little like eyebrow raise there. Something tells me you've got a little thing with soda.
Well, not the sugary kind, but I do love, let's see, what is it? Stevia, as they call it. It's this a stevia sweetened soda. The grape one, oh my God, it just tastes just like super sugary grape soda, but it's just, there's no calories, it's good, filtered water, you know. I consider it candy, so that's about as junk foody as I get. And
Well,
I
grape
was thinking
flavored.
about it. I was like, kind of wish I had one right about now.
Well, after the show, you can go get one.
Stop it on the way home.
Yeah. Anything purple tends to taste delicious, in my opinion. But so one of the downloads I might get would be to actually restructure whatever it is inside of me that's connected to that. Because our DNA, it's a lot, it's instructions. It's you know, it's like opening up a Lego construction book. It's going to tell you what pieces go where. And that's kind of like what our DNA is, right? So sometimes I'll get downloads that'll kind of like send signals like stop doing that or like reformulate this, whatever. Some of the downloads I get are just energetic blasts, sometimes where I'll actually feel it. Sometimes I will get incredibly tired. Sometimes, and this is actually pretty common with people, you'll be visited in the middle of the night. This has happened to me many times, and it changes each time. The first time it ever happened was about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. And I was laying in my bed and it was like, I just woke up at some point in the middle of the night, maybe 2, 3 in the morning. And I was fully awake. Like, this is not, oh, I was dreaming it. Like, I recognized, not saw with my eyes, but I knew that there were these like orbs in my room. And I knew that they were like fairies or pixies or something. I knew because I felt it. I knew that they were benevolent. And I knew that all I had to do was give them permission and they would come to me and they would fix things. They would work on me energetically. And so I gave them permission and they just kind of gave me like a like that, like just these little orbs bouncing around. And then they came into my body and started working on things. And I could ask them, could you please work on my sacral? And they would move to my sacral chakra. Could you please work on my heart? They would move into my chest because it was like this co-creation of healing for me. And I've also had other times where I've had, I call him Gandalf, and he's come to me in like he had like this wheelbarrow full of. I knew it was medical equipment, but it wasn't anything that we have here. And he was just like boom, 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 you know, like coming up to me with his thing. And he was basically just, I just knew to just lay there, and he was going to work on me energetically. And so that's another type of download that I've gotten that I know other people get because they've told me. The challenge is, though, knowing that you're not crazy and that this is happening. And as long as you're not like going out and like hurting people, it's okay to talk about it. Just like ask the universe for someone to talk to about it, you know? So those are the kinds of downloads that I've gotten.
Oh, I like it. Yeah, such things do happen for sure.
Mhm.
And I think when you're energetically, functioning well is when they tend to come the most. So I'll tend to almost use them as a way to gauge where I'm at. If I haven't been dreaming, haven't had downloads, haven't had intuition, then I realize, okay, I'm hung up on things that aren't really essential. Like I'm not taking all of life as important.
Hmm.
I'm off balance, basically. You know, you have to get.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have a strong belief that everything's important. It's kind of Bashar, a great channeled, crazy entity, you know, says that it's really where the light leads you to wherever your excitement, wherever your attention pulls you. That's the universe seeing you, saying over here. And we're worried about, well, how am I going to get it all done? I've got this list and I have to achieve all of these things. And the universe is going, well, do this. And you're like, no, I'm over here. I got to do this. This is what's important. It's like, no, over
Yes.
here. And then we go, no. So yeah, like, how do you keep in that balance? How do you keep, as they put in the Celestine Prophecy, following the insights?
Yes. So this is something that I recently got a download about. So this is kind of perfect synchronicity. So one of the things that I recently, realized was download. It was brought into my awareness is that desire is really the only thing that matters. So what you need to do is constantly follow your desire, but also recognize what comes back. Because this is all an experiment. So you want to do the scientific method. Okay, well, I really feel the desire to do this one thing. So I'm going to go do this one thing, and then I'm going to see what it results in. I just feel like calling this friend, or I feel like doing this. And then you see what results from that. Maybe it was actually your ego that had the desire to call that friend because you were feeling bad and you were like, you were transferring something onto them, or you had like some type of contract with them to whatever. And it didn't really go that well because it was the desire that you had was actually programmed with some type of pain that you need to resolve within you, some type of wound that needs healed. So if the result comes back and it doesn't feel the way you want it to feel, so this is why observing your emotions and recognizing that they're just there to inform us. It's like, if it's like litmus paper. You're not gonna look at litmus paper as a scientist and go, I'm mad at you, litmus paper. I mean, you might. But it's just a tool, and that's what emotions are. So you follow your desire, you see what the result comes back, and then you observe it and you say, all right, do I want more of this? No. It doesn't it doesn't make me feel like love. It doesn't make me feel like serving. It does, because ultimately what we want to do is be in full surrender and alignment with the will of God, which is service and love and surrender. And if we're truly on that path, if we've truly accepted that, it doesn't matter what goes on around us. We will be in a state of peace and love and calm and all those things frolicking through the fields, right? Except we might be in a busy city in traffic. And, like someone's honking behind us. And instead of getting enraged at them, we'll go, oh my God, that person's angry. That's so cool. I hope they learned something from that. I'm so thankful to be part of like this situation where it's like being part of a flash mob. You guys, we're on a flash mob right now. And so you can get to that place, but you have to follow your desire. Now you refine it when it comes back to you and say, okay, I don't want this anymore. What do I want to do? Okay, universe, help me understand this. Maybe bring in somebody to help me heal. Help me understand why it is that my desire was programmed for this specific behavior. All right, so the thought, the old belief is that I need to reach out to this friend because I feel responsible for other people's happiness. Okay. Do I choose to believe that anymore? I don't feel like that's functional. So I'm going to put that to the side and recognize the behaviors that go along with that old belief. Okay, well, I would do this. This is another thing I would do. This is another thing I would do. Okay, so I'm going to choose to not engage in those behaviors anymore. This is my new belief. I am not responsible for anybody's anything except for my own. And then these are the new behaviors that are consistent with that. So I'm going to engage in these new behaviors that are consistent with this new belief that I am trying to program into my desire, because I want to follow my desire, because every single time I reprogram myself, it's getting me closer to the surrender towards the will of God.
Absolutely. And the importance of asking, like you mentioned, so you need help with something, you want to understand something, you want people to be able to communicate about downloads with. There's an importance of just asking. And who are you asking? Asking God, universe, doesn't matter. Whatever it fits into a person's frequency, you're asking. And there's asking with confidence. And that's something that I hope people will take away and build on. It's like, especially people who are awake and they don't have a fellowship. Like they feel very, very alone. It's like, well, ask for a fellowship, be aware of a fellowship, feel what that would feel like. As long as you're sure nobody's looking, just have a conversation with them.
Well, it's something you just said is, ask for it with confidence. So here's a challenge that occurs though for people that are trying to learn how to manifest, but they don't know even what that feels like. If you have never experienced the vibration of unconditional love, how are you supposed to consciously feel it? And this is where, going back to like reprogramming your desire into something closer and closer and closer, the closer that you get to desire, the more behaviors you're going to engage in that will get you closer to the potential for those experiences. So if all you're doing is like doing drugs and hanging out with people that aren't loving you, you're never going to experience unconditional love. But I guarantee you that if you ask for that experience and you start to change your behaviors in alignment with your new beliefs, you will have people come in that provide you with unconditional love. And so it's almost like a point of reference. You'll start to get points of references, but you have to kind of like start where you're at. And you said ask with confidence. Some people don't have confidence in it. So sometimes when you're first starting out, it is totally fine to just be like, help! Anybody? Anybody? Help? Help? I don't even know what I need to be asking for, but help? Thanks.
Oh, I like it. Show me something impossible today.
Please just help me. Just help me. Yeah. Show me something impossible today. Show me something fun. Play a game with me. Show me that if this is true, and feel whatever you're feeling. There were times during especially last year, where I was just angry. I'm like, you guys are all about love and I don't feel loved. I feel like I have to give up who I am in order to blah, 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 and I would like have these rages with my team, my spirit team. Meanwhile, I see them in my mind's eye and they're just standing there like a bored receptionist filing their nails, just going, you done yet?
Oh yeah, they're just looking at you going, oh, they're in the love is for the week stage.
And then we got to get to work.
Oh, I think we broke up there
love
for
is
about
for the week?
about 5 or 10 seconds. I think it hung up. So what did you So you were saying that you were just angry.
Yeah. So like I had these bouts of anger because I was detaching from my ego identity. And I remember at one point I had read page 47 of Ram Dass's Be Here Now, and it's about releasing desire. And what I understand now is releasing desire from your ego identity, not desire to serve or any desire at all. It's just that specific, self-serving desire. And I got so mad about it. I'm like, who am I without my desire? I desire thing. I will lose who I am if I don't desire. And I just had like kind of this rage fit. And I was like mad at my spirit team. And I'm like, you guys are supposed to be about love. And like, I'm just a miserable down here. Like, what am I supposed, I'm just trying to be me. And meanwhile, I can see them in my mind's eye, just kind of like filing their nails like a board secretary, just like, you done? Are you done? Are you done having your little thing? So we can like get back to what we were doing. But there's so much patience. So it is absolutely okay to panic, to freak out, to get angry, to get sad. These are normal because what you're doing is part of you is going away, the old part of you. And that's scary. And for someone who has experienced nothing but like sadness in their life and chaos, and it's just this place of not unconditional love, and you're told, oh, there's this place over here that there's unconditional love and acceptance, and you can be whoever you want to be, and people will love you, and it's perfect. You're perfect the way you are. It seems very suspicious. It seems like you're selling something, and a lot of people do, use the love and light movement, the whatever to, it's a marketable thing. But putting that aside, you don't even know what this is like. It's because you're so addicted to feeling bad that the idea of not feeling bad is just like, how is that even possible? Like, you cannot even imagine not being depressed. You can't imagine enjoying a day without, without having a panic attack. But it is possible. You have to go through the fire to get there, though.
Oh, it definitely is. It's like, it reminds me of what Eckhart Tolle calls the pain body, and the pain body being addicting. And so we're all addicted to the pain body. And many people will be saying, well, I want love and I want peace. And Eckhart Tolle is like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't, not at all. It's the last thing you want. You are addicted to that pain body, and how do you feel about that pain body being ancestral? Like, it seems that to me, we are not only are we cleansing ourselves, like we're becoming more aware, and we're on that spiritual path. We're doing our thing. We're the fool in the tarot deck, taking that step into bliss. We know that we're not going to fall off the cliff anymore. And
Do we know that?
the challenge is just get greater, but you also just get bolder, and you realize that it's the only game in town, and you realize that like that's it. Like whether I go like or whether I fly, it doesn't matter. That's the only step that has value. Anything else is just, I don't know, a sale rack at Walmart. It's not very well. If you can do that, but I'm not going to.
Yeah. Not when you know that there's Nordstrom Rack.
Yeah, when there's Nordstrom Rack, or even Ross can be kind of cool. You can just, I'm in and out of Ross like in 3 or 4 minutes. And Goodwill, I mean, it's awesome. We have great Goodwills here in Arizona. So,
We have
yeah.
Goodwill outlets here.
Goodwill
Have you ever been to
outlets.
Goodwill outlet? That's
A
a
good-
program in and of itself.
A Goodwill.
But
Oh, tell me about that.
how long is your show? So Goodwill outlet, basically huge warehouses. That's like all the overstock from the Goodwill stores. So what they do is they put it into bins, and like they're separated. So you've got your clothes bins, your housewares, books, whatever. And it's these humongous warehouses, and they'll roll in a bin for maybe an hour and a half, and then you go through it, and by the time you're done with the whole thing, like it's full new bins, and you just go through and you pay by the pound. So it's something like and like the more you buy, the less expensive it is. So like if you buy like 1 to 10 pounds, it's like $1.29 a pound. And if you buy things like something like 20 plus pounds, it's like 99 cents a pound. So you can get like a full shopping cart full of clothes for like $15 or something. Yeah.
Oh, I like it.
I do too.
Okay. All right. Well, next time I'm cruising through Oregon, I'll have to check that out. Yeah.
Yes. No.
Yeah. So it seems like we're maybe healing ourselves. I tend to almost avoid the word healing because it's kind of loaded. It's just a little bit overused in the new age,
Yeah.
world. But we're becoming more. We are I don't want to say ascending either. Well, I need to come up with some new words because I don't want to use healing, or ascending, but we're awake and we're on the path.
Evolving. We're I like to say we're reprogramming ourselves.
Reprogramming.
You talked about the pain body being inherited.
Oh yeah, ancestral issues, because like we're healing. We're here doing this for us right now, but I feel a real attachment. You might say through my bone marrow, through my DNA, which DNA is totally programmable. You can realign it. It's like tuning a radio station. It's like a big equalizer. You can change it, and I've had downloads about that. Just let's go and reprogram it.
Yeah.
So we are healing us. We're evolving, but we're also very, very attached through multiple timelines to our ancestry. Like we are literally healing our ancestral bone marrow all the way back to whatever, the last cataclysm, whatever you want to call it, and beyond.
We really are. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you, I guess you'd say, interpret that? Like, when you help people, are you ever, like when you're working with people, does that ever come up where it seems that they're working on something, but you can see, oh, well, this has been in your family for 11 generations.
Yes.
And now you're the one who has the ability to zap it through all the timelines, all the generations.
Yes. Yeah, I see it all the time. Probably every other client that I work with is dealing with that specific type of scenario. I mean, it's in different ways. Like some people come in with trauma issues, some people come in with, divorce issues or codependency or whatever, but they're all tied into that generational trauma, which is something that I advertise I work with. I help people like kind of see those patterns. And so one of the ways that I kind of explain it to people, it's like your family line is going on this train and somebody has to jump off and grab onto it and dig their heels in like, we're going towards a cliff. We got it. We can't let the train fall off the cliff. And so that's what I consider these people. They're generational trauma line breakers. Some of my clients have said, I feel like the rainbow sheep of my family, not the black sheep, the rainbow sheep, which I love. But yeah, I work with them a lot. We do a lot of past life regression. That's very, very helpful. And what we do with that, along with Reiki, and man, I've had some really, really cool sessions with that, because there have been times when we've actually gone into the future. And I've had situations where I've had clients being healed by something in the future that they couldn't communicate with. But I've been able to communicate with it and be able to, where I'm at in this reality, be able to place my hands on them, or do, Reiki, or some type of, like, I might see an energy ball and I'll just like pick it up and like throw it somewhere. Like, that's weird, but okay. It is what it is. I do as I'm told. But I've been in like circles with it. It's like so weird to explain to other people, because I just see it. Like, I've had clients laying on a table where we're doing the sessions, and the next thing I know, I recognize their ancestors everywhere around them, and I'm part of the circle. And we're just like, I feel my hands start to do this, and I'm just like, what's going on? Okay, I'm just here doing my part. This is really cool, y'all. Okay, I'll be quiet. You're right, Grandma. Okay, and so I do work a lot with that. And I do find that people that come to me, they don't, if I ask them how they found me, they're like, I don't really know. I was just like, I just found you. And I'm like, cool. So I guess we're supposed to work together. And those people usually are the ones that are breaking generational trauma, and they're healing it with accepting that it happened, forgiving, transcending past forgiveness to acceptance, and finally, the stage is like gratitude for what actually occurred. Because it's a story, and it's like if you're playing a video game and it's really hard, but you finish it, Final Fantasy 10, do you regret how hard it was at that one boss when you didn't have, when all of your characters almost died, but you still made it? You don't really regret it. You're grateful for it, because holy crap, that was a really, really well-made game. And that's kind of what we're doing here. So if you look at it from that perspective, which I do, it becomes fun.
Yeah, as we're working on gaining wisdom humbly, you know, I think one of the things that happens, especially with years, I mean, some wisdom seems to be attached to, you can call it 7-year cycles, whatever, but it seems to be time. People show up with different levels of wisdom when they incarnate, but also time helps. And at least for me, being, like 49 now, I think, there's this point you get to where you forgive your past. You forgive all these many different incarnations you've had in this lifetime, and you just start to get over it. Because it's almost like, to forgive and to heal yourself, you have to heal your own past, because you realize, yeah, the person I was 3 weeks ago, 3 months ago, 5 years ago, why do you have to be attached to that? You really don't,
You don't.
And so you just go, yeah, that was cool. That was cool, It's almost like incarnation to me now feels like you're a meteorite coming through the atmosphere, and all that makes it through is molten metal. Everything else is burned away, and then you crash into the earth. And there's incarnation, And so we're just burning off all this stuff. So who cares? You really have to let it go. Let your own go, and let your ancestries go. And then it changes how you see things.
It does. It really does. So when you say let it go, this was always a something that infuriated me when I first woke up, because people told me, look, you just have to let it go. You just have to let it go. And quite frankly, when I went through my healing, I didn't meet very many healers that actually helped me. It was more, it's like they couldn't handle me, as a human. And I remember like going in several different sessions with, I went to a lot of healers. And I remember like one time I was in a session and I was very angry about something that had occurred with my mother. And I was like, it's just not fair. And the man that I was working with went like that. And I'm like, I need to shut down now, because you can't handle my feelings. And I couldn't find someone that could handle my feelings. And that was something that I learned how to do as a therapist then. It's like people need someone to hold that space for them. And that just wasn't something that was available, you know?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So you're a licensed therapist, right?
Yes.
And you're doing Reiki, and you're doing like the awake therapist
Yeah.
stuff all
The
in
awake
one.
therapist stuff.
The
Yes.
awake therapist stuff. It's it,
I love it. I have my new tagline, Melinda Norman, the awake therapist.
yeah, the awake therapist. I think that's good. You
Yeah.
can put that on your card, awake therapist. And you know what? People who got it are that's who you're looking for. Someone go
Yeah.
awake therapist. Well, hell yeah, I'm on my way.
Great.
Yeah. Well, so how about this? There's a lot of people talk about the ascension. And I mean, ultimately, to me, the ascension's a personal thing. Whether we're all going to like hop on ships to the Pleiadians or not, I don't really think so. But it seems like you'll see it in the awake news these days, like ascension symptoms. It seems like as the Earth is going into a new part of the universe, as we have a huge cycle, it seems like the energy is changing, and people. I have noticed recently that the world's gone crazy, and I just.
Have you noticed that?
I did last Thursday. I was like, man, something's changed. And so, what do you think is going on? And how does it affect like the masses versus the 144,000 awake people?
Well, there's a lot I could say about that.
Go for it.
I mean, where to even begin? Let's start because I feel like that was a lot of questions
Yeah,
all
start
in one.
randomly.
Start randomly. Well, first of all, I think it's a storyline. I don't necessarily know that it's the storyline. I don't believe that there's one storyline. I honestly believe that we're all here doing whatever it is we feel like we want to do. Everything here is completely neutral. It really is. And we're assigning things all the time. I do believe that we have a soul signature. That's something I've experienced, especially like, and the confirmation came from doing past life work with people, like being able to. I remember I was in this one interaction with a woman, and she and I were doing this exercise where we were seeing each other's past lives. It was like boom, 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 boom. It was just flipping through, flipping through, flipping through. And what we both noticed was that in every single lifetime, we had the exact same energetic signature. And that's why we knew who we were. It's like she knew that I was this person because they had the same energetic signature. So, in terms of, I know some people that think that you incarnate into every life. Like I've been you, you've been me, like quite literally, I've been in your life, you've been in mine. I think that's a storyline. I don't feel like it's true personally, but I know people that feel like it's true, and that's cool. Go live on that storyline if that's what brings you happiness. I know some people that think we're here to just destroy things. Okay, that's your choice. I'm not gonna probably be called to be in your presence because it's not it's like think of life as like the analogy is like the video game. Okay. And we're all playing this massive multiplayer online game. And some people want this download pack and some people want this download pack. Some people want to go, be a dwarf and some people want to be elves, and you just kind of like interact as you will. You brought up the 144 awake. I know a little bit about that, but honestly,
Oh,
it
I made it
feels,
up.
it's not made up. It actually is a thing.
Oh,
'Cause I've
okay. Well,
heard
I made it up, but if it's a thing,
dude,
it's just
it's a thing. It's a
okay.
thing. People think that there's like 144,000 people that will ascend, and it's one of I've. And this is another thing is like a lot of these storylines they have other storylines attached to them. There's no one storyline, and that's why I pay attention to things that seem interesting and inspiring to me, but I don't really take any of it too seriously because they're just stories. Um, so yeah, the what do I think is going on with the earth? I think that it is evolving as we are, and we just evolve with it at all times. I remember being a kid and thinking there's nothing else to the world is just perfect the way it is, and there's nothing new. I am living in the most perfect time, and nothing's ever going to get better because it's just the most perfect time period to live in, and all the war is done and whatever. And then I grew up. And if you look back in history, it's actually way better now, in my opinion, than it ever has been. We see a lot more of it now. We actually see war on TV. We see it's because of the technology, we're able to experience it at a much deeper level. But if you actually look at history, it's way better now than it ever has been, and it's always getting better. I also remember as a kid thinking that I needed to like things were the point was to keep things the same. I didn't want to keep things the same. I was always interested in evolving and learning and like, let's try something new and different. Let's move somewhere and let's blah, blah, blah. What's different? What's new? But I quickly learned that there was this like desire for people to keep things the same. And what I mean by that is you'll hear people talk about the good old days. It's like, yeah, but now we have these new things because we evolved into them. People think, oh, newspapers used to be the best thing in the world. Well, now we've evolved to something else. But people and people want to get upset about like, oh, all the, I'm just going to throw this random thing out there. The video stores, like video stores are obsolete. It's so horrible. It's like, well, yeah, but now we can download it online, So it's like, yeah, something else went away, but we've evolved into something that's more appropriate for the life that we're now currently living in the direction we want to go in, and people want to say, oh, technology is so horrible. It's so bad. It's like, well, how are you using it? Because I think it's awesome. Like you have to use it appropriately. And just like anything that you evolve into or change into, how are you going to use the object that's there? Are you using the internet to connect with people, to learn, to shop on Amazon, whatever, or are you using it to just watch pornography all day? Either way, no judgment, but are you evolving as an individual? Do you feel satisfied? Does your soul, do you feel like every day is different and new and exciting, and it's okay to live in the present moment because every single moment is flipping amazing and I wonder what's going to happen next? Or are you somebody who's like, okay, I have to think about 5 years from now because in 5 years I want to be in this place and da 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 da. Well, you're not really living.
No, not at all. And the thing about 5 years in the future's a funny thing, but definitely people who believe that there is a good old days. Well, back in the day it was great, and I came to that conclusion that there were no good old days. That's silly because the past is very, very editable. You can make up whatever past you want because it's not here. It doesn't exist.
Yep.
So you can say,
Yep.
back in the day it was crap. It's like, or it was better back in the day. And I tend to have a prerogative of, well, Genghis Khan wasn't cool. Like, we don't kill entire civilizations because they're in the way. We might have violence, but if you look at history, not on the scale that used to exist. No,
Exactly.
we don't. Yeah, it's like Portland doesn't kill Seattle because, like,
I love Seattle.
it's there. Yeah, well, we don't trust you.
Oh, by the way, side note, I was having a burger earlier today, and there was this amazing dad sitting there with his kids, and his little girl, who was like 7 or 8, is like, Daddy, what language do they speak in Seattle? And I'm just sitting there like, I just had to, like, I did a spit take with my water because it was so cute. It's like, what language do they speak in Seattle? Because she doesn't know. And he went into an amazing conversation with this young lady about, well, we were just there. Did you find it easy to communicate with them? Well, yeah, I could talk to them. Well, then what language is that? Well, I speak English. Okay. Well, do you speak any other? And they just had this beautiful conversation where, some people get annoyed when kids ask questions, but he just had this beautiful way of taking this like la 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 kind of question and then turning it back on her and saying, well, what do you think? Let's look at the evidence. Let's learn how to learn and how to answer our own questions. And then this man whips out his phone and they start talking about they start researching the different languages of the world. Well, what's the most, commonly spoken language? And I'm sitting there going, I'm learning stuff from this. This is great. And I look at that and I'm like, wow, that's the world we live in, where we're not just like brushing kids aside like we did in the 80s. Kids are to be seen and not heard. We're actually looking at them and saying, well, what do you think? You're a person. What's your perspective on that? I love that. Kudos to whoever that guy was. That was awesome.
That's one of those great moments. Yeah. Well, definitely the good old days weren't that great. They didn't have Novocaine. I mean, I think the present is better. I don't know.
I agree.
Well, you mentioned MMOs, like, so, mass multiple online games. And it seems like a lot of awake people think about those a lot because it seems like we're using technology to mimic our own growth as a humanity, you might say.
Hmm.
So gamers are oftentimes pretty smart people. They're pretty tuned in because they know. They go,
I do.
this is an MMO. I choose a character. I choose what I feel like doing. Yet there are these rules that I have to play with in this world. It's almost like we're using that technology, basically, like we're figuring out what reality is through gaming.
Yeah, well, I mean, everything is a symbol, right? Everything's symbolic.
Yes.
We could spend lots of time talking about archetypes in movies and in books, and just being able to see those patterns. But video games, it's just more of the same, And I really feel like I don't know much about it, but I know with virtual reality that's coming out for home, home entertainment or home video game sets. I mean, I put one of those on a while ago, a little over a year ago, maybe almost 2 years ago, maybe. And I thought, oh, it's just going to be a video game. But I put it on. I mean, a butterfly came out to me, and I was like, whoa, because my brain literally thought it was real. And I had this huge, and it wasn't that I couldn't feel this headset because it was a big, bulky headset. It was one of like the first generation ones from a few years ago. Um, but it was so realistic that I could like feel it on my face because my brain made it real. And if we go back to the Hermetic principle, all is mind, video games. I mean, if we are always creating our reality, maybe this really is a video game. But there, like you said,
Yeah.
there are rules in this reality. Gravity exists.
And I guess the idea is really to become Neo because that's it, is you realize that, oh, everyone has to play by these rules, but they don't. Then once
Yeah.
Neo realized that he could just stop bullets, he didn't have to die,
Hmm.
and that's when it gets really fun. So I think that's kind of the path of the individual. I mean, you mentioned something, soul signature. I've always
Hmm.
considered that exact concept to be the soul's volition, is what I called it.
Hmm.
A soul
Okay.
has a volition. It goes like, I'm working on this, I'm doing this, I have this energy. Then it may change over time. But like the
Hmm.
soul signature to me is the soul's volition, is this force, is this desire as it goes to experience a certain thing, maybe a puzzle
Hmm.
piece, maybe whatever the experience it is. So
Hmm.
within that signature, there's a desire. You know. So, let's see, what else? Oh. Well, you did an amazing video on individual sovereignty, and that makes me think about, because as we were talking about the whole ascension symptoms and the ascension happening, and to me, really, life is an individual ascension. It's really about yours. Like, who cares what humanity is doing? This is where it's at, right here.
So, who does care? Why is it important then to people?
It's an interesting concept. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you're right when you mention that it's a story. You look at Sonia Barrett calls it a program within the holographic canvas, would be her
Hmm.
definition.
Okay.
So it seems like, well, it comes down to, does the news matter? And in truth, it doesn't. It doesn't have anything to do with us at all unless we
It's,
choose to tune our
yeah.
DNA to that frequency, and we don't
Right.
have to. Really,
No.
there is no news. There is no world out there at all
Hmm.
other than the one that we desire to create, but we're just not. Well, I'll speak for myself because you may already have it down. But it's that we just don't have that confidence in our own DNA tuning to create nothing but what we want, what interests us
Hmm.
yet. And then when we do, there won't be a CNN, there won't be a news because who cares? That to me, that's trying to pull you out of yourself and make you somebody else, like that person you become in a crappy relationship
Hmm.
with your own life and the world.
So when you say that it wouldn't exist anymore, would it not exist anymore? Is it one of those, well, if the tree falls in the woods, you can't hear it kind of, does it make a sound where if you turned on the TV, it would continue to exist, but because it's not part of your reality and you don't feed into it, it doesn't exist for you? and none of those storylines interact with your DNA or with your energetic system.
Well,
Does that
it
make
makes
sense?
sense. Well, it's like a radio. A radio ultimately, to receive, when you are tuning a radio, what you're really doing is you are broadcasting that signal, a very, very faint one. So you tune your radio, just like your own DNA, to, let's
Hmm.
say, 98.7, then only 98.7, because you're broadcasting it, and then when that frequency which exists in the air matches it, you're picking up the slight differences, and then you're creating analog sound out of them. So I mean, ultimately, a radio doesn't tune in, it tunes out everything else. So ultimately, in a radio's world, like in our world, there's only what is in alignment, in vibrational harmony with our DNA's resonance, that we have the ability to tune, that we are in complete control over.
Love
Well,
it.
I just don't know it. Some days, I go, crap, I tune
Well,
into.
yeah, well, some days we get lost in the story, or some days we have interference. 98.7, like you said, was actually the best radio station in my area when I was growing up, and it was kind of hard to actually tune to. Like the because I lived in the middle of nowhere, and it was the signal was being sent. It was kind of like a cool radio station, so like kind of low budget, and it was broadcast from like an hour and a half away, like 60 miles north of me. And so, but on good days, you could turn to 98.7 and hear some Tori Amos, you
Yeah.
know?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I like the visual of that.
Yeah, and if a person wants to have fun, a person can think of. So if you're at 98.7, you can look at, as the Course in Miracles called them, the dark companions. Um,
Okay.
they're going to tune into your frequency a little bit. So like when you're trying to tune into a station and you get it, but you hear another station interfering,
Okay.
that's an attempt to get into your frequency. So it's funny, I look at that could be the news, that could be the world, but you don't want to see. It's trying to tune into your frequency.
So what do you do as an individual to shut that out?
Tune into your own self, your own frequency more. And then the more clear you are, the more you're broadcasting a perfect signal that you desire, then nothing else can get, there's nothing else involved. You really are creating that reality completely. I guess the master basically just broadcasts so powerfully that nothing can bother them. There's a great story of the Zen master who
Hmm.
he would take his students to the market, and he would sit right in the middle of all this craziness and meditate, and there was this force that came out of him, and people would walk around him, they'd never bump him. They just knew he was there. There was his presence. You'd go, oh, I'm just walk around this energy bubble. um, but his students would have people falling over him, spilling crap on him. What are you doing sitting on the ground? And that's where I think that's at least where I'm at. I'm trying to be the master that has the energy bubble that nobody can get through. It doesn't mean that I'm cut off from the world. It just means that I only resonate and I only see what I want. You know. Yeah.
Okay. What would it be like if you saw everything though? Versus just because that's kind of, and I'm just opening this up as a to just kind of bounce back and forth, but the concept of only seeing what you want, isn't that kind of like a form of control? And if we're kind of trying to like release that control and just allow everything, wouldn't that include seeing everything as it is?
Yeah, as I was actually describing the Zen master, which I've always thought was a good story, I was thinking how it is fairly controlling. You know,
Uh-huh.
yeah, it's like, do you really will only be? Maybe the truth is, you really want to just know your own frequency and be creating what you want, but you certainly want to do it within all the craziness. I guess you're just not distracted by that which is not in harmony with yourself. You look at it and go, cool.
Yeah. So that's kind of because I do kind of experience that sometimes where because obviously I'm an empath, so I like open myself up for people when they come into therapy with me. And if I'm not in therapy, I mean I love people, but everyone's really, really shocked when they find out I'm a hermit. Like I'm a really big introvert. I love people, but it's like I can only because I'm so open and I just can feel everything. I see everybody's path. I see everything. Like if somebody comes in, I can see all of the things that need to be altered. It's like it's like pulling down their stats screen on a video game and saying, okay, well, you've been allocating your points to this skill when really you need to allocate them to this skill if you're trying to become, to be this way. And so to become that master where you can sit in that space where you're not controlling anything, where you're just allowing things to come and go, but having such mastery over your energetic space that people are respecting it. That would be pretty cool. I'd like that. But I really feel like one of the things that I do is I do transmute energy for people, because I do have that's just my frequency and vibration, that's where I'm at. And so when I'm around a crowd, people feel better. Like if I am with my family, they feel better, because there's just something about my presence that allows for dissipation of like I can feel the tension going up and then it just goes back down, because I can provide that. And it's not something I consciously do, but it also is very draining. And it's a lot of work to be that proxy for people. So when I have the opportunity to be by myself, I'm by myself, but I would love to get to that point where I could just be anywhere at any time. But like a true video game, if you put in a cheat code, and I did it now, cause I'm in my mid-30s, but if I did that right now, I would feel like, what is there left to achieve on this planet? Why am I even here? It's like, I want to earn that. I want to work for that. I want to have those human struggles. I want to be in a human experience, which is why I came here. I want to know what it's like to struggle, to cry all night over a boy, So I did that. And I want to do that, to be able to transcend out of it, to say, you know what? I did it. You can too. Here's how I did it. How can I now help you? Let me, I see you in the center of a pit. I'm going to throw my hand halfway across, and then you just reach out your hand. I can grab you, meet me halfway, and we'll do this together. But you got to put your hand out too, So it's been this process for me, learning how to heal from these situations so I can kind of go back for other people, and that's something that actually happened to me as a kid. And ironically, through my spiritual awakening, is I didn't have anyone when I was a kid. I had like maybe a teacher here or like a friend's parent there that like said something that was nice to me a little bit. But for the most part, my childhood was really abusive and ugly and hell, and then going through my spiritual awakening, it was kind of the same thing. And I remember thinking, I want to be that person that can go back. Harriet Tubman is a huge, she's so cool to me because she escaped slavery. And then she went back to help others, not once or twice. Like she went back multiple times and like saved lots and lots of people, not her lover, not just her mom, not her brother, strangers, And I look at that and I'm like, I want to be like that when I grow up. That's cool. Why wouldn't you want to be like that? So.
Oh, I get it. Well, being human is fun. There's a lot of people who will say that. I think it's very new agey right now to say that, well, this is not my home. I was really born on somewhere else and blah, blah, blah.
Right, okay.
And I'm like, well, no, I'm, my soul is very deliberately here and I like it. I mean, you're only here for a little while. It's really fun. I mean, let's do it. There's there's something very liberating and very sensual about just embracing life, being like, hell yeah, I love this mess. I love the disaster. It's just wonderful. And I'm working at being that Zen master who walks through it in a state of like, yeah, this is groovy, and sees it all, but like doesn't get run over by the tractor.
Yeah. Let's not do that. Well, it's very interesting that you bring that up because we see that a lot, don't we? People are spiritually awake, and they'll say things like, well, I'm not supposed to be here. I was tricked into being here. I'm being stuck here. It's a prison planet. It's like, that's a story. And that means if you are buying into that story, you are choosing to believe that you are not in control of yourself. And you have sovereignty. You have free will. You have choice. Oh, well, it was taken from me. Okay.
And that's a good topic, sovereignty. Yeah, because you did a video on sovereignty, and it seems like that would be a great, I feel like almost like an example of your work is, hey, be sovereign. I
Hmm.
mean, like, what's your definition of sovereignty and how can that help people? Because, yeah, I'm sure we've both met people who are really mourning that their Pleiadian brothers and sisters are up there dancing in the sky and they're not part of it because they came here to pretty much just like, well, they're already enlightened and they're just like here to like blog
Right.
and
Okay, well, you go do
oh,
that. Have fun being miserable. But it goes into that piece of sovereignty where they're not taking personal responsibility for the choices that they made. Whether it's, oh, they got trapped here. Okay, well, let's go with that storyline. You got trapped here. All right, how are you going to get out? Oh, I can't get out because of these things. Okay, so you're telling me that you have my definition of sovereignty is being able to recognize and use your free will because you have free will. If you do not believe you have free will, then I can't. I mean, okay, that's fine. You're not my audience. But if you are someone who deep down knows that you have free will or even considers desiring free will, then start to act as if you do have free will. Even if that is little by little, okay, well, I'm going to choose to wear something a little risque today because I feel like it. I'm going to color my hair because I want to. I choose to. Start doing things in alignment with your free will or what you would perceive as being free will. And that's what I consider sovereignty, recognizing that you do have control over absolutely every choice you made, even choices as to like, I was born into an abusive family. I went through that period of like, well, somebody must have tricked me. I must have been tricked because I wouldn't have chosen this family. I wouldn't have chosen this. And then, of course, that's ego. That's hubris. That's you work your way out of that and say, okay, let's suppose that I did. Let's just pretend that I did choose the life that I chose, that I contracted with it. Side note, if you want to learn more about that, I highly recommend Carolyn Mace Sacred Contracts. She has the book, and then she also has a really great it's not really an audiobook, it's like a lecture about the book, where she goes into these contracts that we make before we come here, and it's beautiful, and it's one of those books where I knew it before I read it, but reading it of what happened. Um, when we're, let me just pretend for a second. Let me entertain the idea that maybe I agreed to these things before I incarnated. Let's just pretend. Okay, why would I do that? Well, okay, I mean, I guess if I hadn't gone through what I went through, then I wouldn't be where I'm at. I wouldn't have the career I have. I wouldn't have met the partner that I met. I wouldn't have the children that I have. I wouldn't have the things that I have now. And if you're sitting in a space of being unhappy with your life, it's really kind of hard to do that because you just want it to be better. But you have to start doing better. You have to start making different choices. Oh, well, I can't because of this. Well, then you can't, I guess, because you're choosing not to. I work with people who have severe depression, and there are some people who get really upset about hearing that depression is a choice. Depression, it is, but it is not a choice. Mostly it's not. But you can choose to engage in behaviors that heal the depression. Okay. And you are talking to someone who has literally been in bed where I mean, it's so bad that I would have to like knock my leg out of bed, knock my arm out, and then just fall onto the floor to get myself up. So I know what depression is like. I know what anxiety is like. I know what panic attack is like. But I had to work my way out of them. And I've been on medications. I've done the things, I've done all the things. And the only thing that really healed me was allowing myself to recognize that I have a choice in absolutely everything that I do, and then working my butt off to change my life, to take people out of my life that were no longer, they were just toxic. And some of those were relatives, some of those were lovers, some of those were like close family members. There were people that I thought I needed to be happy. I had to completely rearrange everything that I thought that I was in order to get to this place, because the majority of the symptoms that I had were there because I had been indoctrinated to believe that in order for me to live a certain life, I had to do certain things. I was expected to be chopped up and to put into a box in order to be put into the societal box. And that was depressing because I wasn't being loved. I wasn't being validated. I was just being manufactured. And so you have to choose to say, I choose not to be manufactured. I have symptoms of ADHD. Okay, cool. There's nothing wrong with me. It's just a different way that my brain works, I guess. How can I manage it? How can I work with it instead of saying there's something wrong with me? Because there's nothing wrong with me. I choose to have this person in my life, even though you're mad at me because I'm not doing what you expect me to do. I'm going to choose to not engage in this tradition because I don't like it. I read a thing recently that said tradition is peer pressure from dead people. And I'm like,
I like that.
that's not true. I like that too. So you get to choose what you want. And yes, there will be fallout because you're expected to act certain ways in order to receive the benefits of living in a society. But why would you want to be connected to people who are not respecting who you choose to be? And that's a really hard pill to swallow when you're first going into this, because you're like, everybody around me is someone that I feel I need. It's the community I grew up in. It's whatever. It's my relatives. It's my friends. And a lot of those are going to go away because they're not necessarily healthy for you. They're not going to treat you the way that you choose to be. They don't recognize you as this new person that you are, but you have to choose. And that's what personal sovereignty is about.
Choosing. I like that. Yeah. Well, of course I like it. But yeah. Well, family it's quite a topic because to me, as we go along, one starts to realize that your family, sometimes in life you just don't have any. And then sometimes you do, and some is biological and some is not. So it's really important to, I love the concept of removing what doesn't serve. Like many of us are so much further along than we realize. It's like if you've been, huffing and puffing after the getting of wisdom, you're going up this hill and it's kind of a switchback and you're just going up and up and up. Then you take a break one day because you're really tired and you look down and you realize, wow, I had no idea how far I'd come,
Uh-huh.
And most of us, when you start removing what doesn't serve, whether it's family, whether it's individuals, whether it's jobs, geographic locations, whatever, the more of that you cut away, that you remove, the more you are you.
It's true.
And that's an amazing, I don't know how to articulate it other than that, but it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, this is me. Oh, this is who I am. And look where I've come. Look down. Oh my God. Well, what's up there? Okay, now me as more me is going to experience going where I'm going. I didn't even know until 40 years. Then I looked down and went, oh shit, there's a me. Oh,
yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And that's sovereignty.
Yes, it is. It is. And another thing that I would say to people who are are afraid of cutting people out, there's two things I want to say. First of all, I went through a period of not cutting people out because I had, there was someone that was in my life that was influential to me who basically convinced me that cutting anybody out of your life isn't love. And I was very confused about this concept of what is love, what is not, because I was still in the mindset that I need to put other people before me and other people's feelings matter more than my own. And so it took me a while to shift that and to realize that, quote unquote, cutting people out of my life, the way in which you do it is really what matters. Okay. I don't cut people out of my life in terms of I've blocked you. It's more like I'm just going to be who I am and you can choose to come around if you want. And if not, yeah. And what I find is that people just don't come around because I'm going to be who I am. I'm going to speak my truth. I'm going to be I will always be kind. I will always be loving, but you're not necessarily going to like it, but I'm not going to lie to you. And what I find is that people tend to, if they don't like it, they just bounce off of me and then they don't come back. So that's a version of quote unquote cutting people out of your life. You're not, and there might be times when you have to, and this is the second part, to bite the bullet and actually cut people out of your life. You might have to block people. You might have to delete people. And don't be afraid to do that. Even if you find out later, oh, that was a mistake. They really did care about me. If they really cared about you, they'll be cool with you coming back. You just tell them hey, I was going through a thing. And they'll be like, it's cool. It's totally fine. I saved your seat, Because that's unconditional love. It's always going to be there. And so don't be afraid to cut people out of your life. And you can do it in a gentle way. You can do it in a tumultuous way where maybe you're slamming the door. but always know that you need to put yourself first at all times. Now, this is very different from being selfish, because people are like, oh, it's like, isn't that just selfish? Well, if you don't put your gas mask on first on a plane, you can't really help somebody else, can you? Because you're going to die. You have to put your gas mask on first. So always take care of yourself. Now, there is a line. There is a line between this and that all the time. There's a very thin line between this and that. There's self-care, being aware of yourself, making sure that you are in a great place. And then there's the concept of selfishness. Selfishness occurs out of fear. Okay? When we love ourselves and we make sure our needs are met, then we are in a place to serve others. We're in a place to say, you know what? I'm fed, I'm warm, I've got all my basic needs met, I had a really good night's sleep. What can I do for you? Because I'm in a great space now and I am ready to do my service. What can I do for you? Versus the selfishness, which is like, oh no, I gotta go like do this thing, whatever, because I'm afraid to actually give something to you, because I'm afraid of what you're gonna want from me. Maybe you're gonna want my time or my money or my something like that. And I just don't want to give it to you because I am in the lack mentality of I don't have enough. And so I always have to stay in a state of me, 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 me. See the difference between this and that? It's a
Oh,
very
definitely.
specific
Yeah.
vibration. Yeah.
Because like sovereignty, as one is coming from themselves, like they always go back to where the power is, this within them, the self. As your self becomes to that, master in the market level, then it seems that people do bounce off. And it seems that when you're in the self, it's almost like I once heard down south a preacher say that the Holy Spirit always has a soft touch. And like you'll always, like, whether it's friends or where it can be extremely annoying, where it's family because they have a key to the door, it's
Yeah, they
it's
do.
like somehow or the other your master, your Zen master bubble, they'll just bounce off it. It's like, and if there is words, if there is interaction that has to happen, it'll have a soft touch. It's really, I think, really faith in oneself. Like, like when you do an interview, don't worry about having so many questions. Just show up. It's that faith. Really, it's faith in self.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I help people with, and I think it's even on my website, it's the importance of purifying your intent. And this goes back to reprogramming your desire. Why did I do that? That constant self-examination. Okay. When you and it comes back to it's like, why did I do that? Why did I choose to say those words to that person? Why did I choose to eat that as a meal when I knew it didn't, like why did why? But people don't want to know why. They don't actually want to be seen. They think they do. But when you are truly trying to know yourself, you are looking at everything that you do. You put yourself under the most microscopic of microscopes, like you're just like examining every single little piece of yourself. And if you do that, your behaviors will become purified, which means that your experiences are going to be purified, and then the things that you bring into your life are going to be purified, along with the type of life that you actually desire to live, what your soul really wants. And you had mentioned earlier, you had kind of climbed up this hill and you looked down and you saw this version of yourself, and you were like, oh, what's up there? What's also interesting is when you observe yourself, you become the observer. But then the next level is observing yourself. And you're like, whoa, it's like that super out of body experience where you're just like, I'm observing myself. And then you know that there's another level behind that. So constantly purifying your intent, examining, why did I do that? What was my motivation? What needs to tweak? Do I like that? Is that good? Is that love? Does that feel like the vibration of what I am trying to achieve while I'm here in this life? Observe it.
Yeah, and as you figure out what you did that wasn't what you truly wanted, it wasn't the way you truly feel, then you know what to work on. You can go, like I need to not be so rushed and hungry and grumpy. Yeah, I didn't mean any of that shit. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Have a snack. Have some goldfish crackers.
Oh, I know. Have some grape soda.
Grape soda, 0 calories.
Yeah.
One of the things you said was, I don't really feel that way. So feelings are a very, very interesting part of our technology. You really did feel that way for some reason, but that's not how you want to feel. That's not what your soul wants to feel. And so why was that not in alignment? The visual I like to give people, if you've ever seen The Neverending Story, which is a phenomenal film, have you seen it?
I don't
No?
think so. I don't think
Okay,
so.
well,
Never ending story. Okay.
so good. But anyway, so there's a scene at the very end where this character gives another character one grain of sand. And it's the last piece of her vast empire is what she calls it. So this humongous world it was called Fantasia, and it was all gone. It was destroyed except for this one grain of sand. And she gives it to him and says, make a wish. And the more wishes you make, the more beautiful Fantasia will get. And I like to tell people your grain of sand, that is your authentic self. That's your soul. And it's in there. It's inside of you. You just have to feel into it. What is this sparkling grain of sand trying to teach me, to tell me, to inform me of? Okay. And so the more that we heal ourselves, the more that we uncover, because it's underneath a bunch of muck. It's usually like when I see people, I usually see it as like it's in a cave, or it's under like a bunch of what did they say? A swamp or a marsh. It's in a marsh, and it's like at the very bottom of that marsh, and you have to dig down and swim down, and then there's like a tunnel you have to go through. But if you can connect to that little grain of sand, and to be aware of it, and then you can expand on it. What are your wishes? What is your heart's desire? What's your grain of sand's desire? Do it. But you have to access your sovereignty in order to do that. You have to know that you can choose. And if you don't know that you can choose, just consider that possibly maybe you might be able to choose, and just go on that and make a little few things here and there. Over time, you'll look down and it'll be 40 years later. You'll be like, oh my gosh, look at this humongous hill that I've just climbed. I'm going to keep going because now you're in shape. You got a climbing butt, like you're probably wearing yoga pants. I don't know. You seem like a yoga pants kind of guy.
Well,
No?
I wear shorts to the yoga studio. I just wear shorts, Yeah, and I tend to wear, a t-shirt. I'm not one of the guys who does yoga in a Speedo. I mean,
You're not?
I could,
Why?
but I don't.
It's a choice.
Yeah, it's a choice. It's a choice. Well, I love what you said, that the more you wish, the more beautiful your